Good Monday morning, everybody. Currently, it is 9:12 a.m. on this July 27th. This is Caleb here with Indiana Weather Online, Indiana Weather Network. Wanted to come on here, give you guys a little bit of a weather update here this morning to talk about what we expect going into the afternoon hours and into this evening, and the overall evolution of what we expect to see here today across Indiana. We'll give it here a couple minutes to let everybody join in here for our briefing here this morning. We do expect to probably go live for severe weather coverage here later today. We'll just have to see how things trend here today, but we'll talk about that, what we expect to see, and kind of the overall setup that may impact today's severe weather risk across Indiana. But we wanted to come on here and share our thoughts from our forecasters and give you guys a little bit of an update about what's going on here today across the Great Lakes region, Upper Midwest, and the Ohio Valley. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you. Good Monday morning as well to you. July 27th. Wow, summer is flying by, you know it? But we are here again for another severe weather risk. So we're going to talk about it here today, talk about what we're seeing and trends that we're seeing here today. Give it here about 2 more minutes here to let everybody join in, and then we will get right into it. We got Crystal in here. Good morning. We got Kate in here. We got Patty in here. Lone Trail, great to see you guys. Crystal's in here. Great to see you. All right, so we got about 250 of you in here so far. More will probably join as we go on here, but we want to dive right into it. We have a lot to talk about, kind of a busy setup and kind of an interesting setup as well. And we're going to go ahead and talk about here. If you guys miss anything, I'll try to answer some questions here at the end that you guys may have, and we can go from there. So, starting right now, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, has issued a level 3 out of 5 enhanced risk for areas Bloomington and North, all of central Indiana and northern Indiana, all areas that you see here in orange. That is an enhanced risk. This is where it's more favored by the Storm Prediction Center to see severe weather occurring, some of which could be strong and even significant, can't be ruled out. A little bit lower confidence the further south you go, but nonetheless a severe weather risk. Areas in yellow is a slight risk. That's a level 2 out of 5 by the Storm Prediction Center. And areas in dark green, that's a marginal risk, 1 out of 5. But something to note here, and even expressed by the National Weather Service in Norman, Oklahoma at the Storm Prediction Center, this risk is subject to change. It can move and deviate a little bit, whether it's deviating further south as an upgrade for southern Indiana, or even further to the east or west. This could wobble a little bit today, and we're going to get into that as to why that is. So this is a very fluid forecast. You're going to hear that term here today used. Something else I want to talk about is the wind. This is going to be the primary hazard here today across Indiana. Though a spin-up tornado can't be ruled out, it's not going to be the primary risk here today. And we'll get into why that is here in a little bit. Here's looking at the wind outlook here today with the Storm Prediction Center severe weather outlook here today on Monday, July 27th. Areas in red. This is a 30 to 44% chance of severe weather criteria being met. That is 58 mile per hour winds or greater. Oftentimes you'll see 60 mile per hour winds on the tag or greater. Highest likelihood occurring in areas shaded in red. Medium chance areas in yellow, and lower confidence in areas in brown. Now, even though the further south you get, the risk is a little bit lower. It does not mean the risk is zero. There's a lot of variables going into today's outlook, and this outlook is subject to change. It is fluid. The hatching that you see on your screen there, that this black outline here with the mesh look to it, this is an area highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center where we can see significant wind gusts. That is 70 plus miles per hour. Now, is every storm going to carry the risk for 70 to 80 mile per hour winds? No. But the potential is there for a few storms, especially if we get a storm complex where we have bowing segments, where the wind could get pulled down to the surface and really protruded out. The potential is there where we could see a few considerable warnings. Even a destructive warning cannot be ruled out here today, depending on the evolution of today's storms. And we'll get into that here when we look at models here in a couple minutes. But anywhere in hatching, you have the potential for significant severe weather. A few gusts or a few reports, you could see that potential for winds up to 75 miles per hour. And this is a probability outlook, meaning that areas in red have a 30 to 44% chance of seeing severe criteria being met within 25 miles of any point. For example, if you're in northern Indiana, if you're in Wabash, Indiana, you have a 30 to 44% chance of seeing 60 mile per hour winds or even 75 miles per hour winds within a 25-mile radius of Wabash, Indiana. That's how these probabilities work. Is every storm going to have that risk? No, but the potential is there, and it's worth mentioning as well. It's kind of a high ceiling event here today. And here's a look at the tornado risk today. Not super high, 2 to 4% chance within 25 miles of any point, pretty low. The storm mode favored today is a storm complex, meaning a line of storms developing. And you could have a spin up tornado or two along the leading edge. But again, this is highly conditional, subject to change. Damaging winds is worth noting here. And this is the first outlook issued today by the Storm Prediction Center. And this will likely be revised, updated, fine tuned, as you will. As more data comes in, we kind of see where storms are developing at, how they're evolving, and what the atmosphere is doing ahead of those storms as well. We're going to look at all of that here today. Here's your hail outlook here today. Highest across northern Indiana, but it does extend to Bloomington and south central Indiana as well. Ohio, Switzerland counties, Dearborn, Ripley also getting in on that 5 to 14% chance within 25 miles. So not a big hail risk day today, but you could have a few quarters out there, some smaller hail today. But a lot of this will depend on storm mode. If our storms remain more isolated, the hail risk may extend further south. But if we get a complex or a line of storms, the hail risk, the large hail risk, think like quarters or larger, will go down a little bit, but the damaging wind risk will go up. Well, let's go ahead and talk about kind of the overall pattern of what we have here today and why confidence is lower. Not that we don't have a favorable environment, but is lower today because of the setup that we have here today. Forecast guidance, especially our short-term models that we use, struggle with setups like this, and I'll explain why. So here's kind of what we have here going on. This is the look at the winds aloft at about 15,000 feet above our heads. So upper level winds. And notice how we have this ridge. We have this trough going on where we have an upper level low sitting right in here. Sorry, that's a bad L, but this is an area of low pressure sitting right in here. And you have an area of high pressure sitting right in here. This is what we call kind of a squeeze play, where we have a difference in pressure aloft, strong winds going right over the upper Midwest, right over Indiana, close to 60, 65 knots aloft. That's about between 60 and 70 miles per hour at about 20,000 feet or so. So pretty high up. But these winds are going to be the area of where we think storms are going to be favored to develop. This is what we call a ridge rider setup, where we have high pressure to the south, low pressure to the north, and a tight pressure gradient in between. And a difference in pressure can be a source of lift that can help get the air rising in a place where thunderstorms are able to develop. But because we have strong winds aloft, they're moving in the same direction. That's going to help transport these storms from north to south here today, and it favors storm complexes, large Boeing segments or clusters, as you will. But because we don't have a cold front coming through, like a lot of times we have in the springtime where we have a low pressure system followed by a cold front, we don't have that. We have these little ripples in the flow aloft in this atmospheric river. Think of it as a river. The atmosphere is fluid. The air is moving just like a river does here on the ground, but you can get little eddies, little ripples. These are called short waves. These are pieces of energy that allow storms to form. And this is where our forecast models struggle a little bit because we don't have a cold front. We have little ripples, but those ripples are important because they're the driving factor behind who's going to see storms, where are we going to see storms, and who's not going to see storms. And that's something the models struggle with. Right now, really, all along here, we have areas of storms developing. Let's go ahead and go back to our forecast models here. Let's go to precipitation. We'll look at future radar here. And this is looking at the HRRR radar. Here we are. This is future radar here at about, whoops, I am way too far ahead. Here we go. So this is this morning's run at about 3 a.m. or so. This model run came out. So we're going to take a look at it here. You can see we had some rain and showers pretty close to what radar looks like right now. We have some severe thunderstorm warnings in the UP right now. We even have one just north of the Indiana state line here in southwest lower Michigan. So is this forecast model perfect? No, but it gives you a good general idea of what to expect here this afternoon. So here we are, 8 a.m., 10 p.m., or sorry, 11 a.m. Here's lunchtime here today around noon. See a little bit more organization going on up here across Wisconsin, perhaps even northwestern lower Michigan. could get in on some action here this afternoon. But here's where it gets tricky. How strong are these storms going to be as they enter Indiana here this afternoon? This is 3 p.m. on this model. This timing could vary a little bit. These storms could come earlier. They could come a little bit later. So do take this with a grain of salt. This is not a set in stone forecast here, and the models kind of struggle with that a little bit, especially on timing here on these setups, because we don't have a cold front. We're just looking at little ripples, subtle ripples. They're very subtle, and these can change as the atmosphere is very fluid. So here we are this afternoon. We expect a really strong storm complex to move through, entering Indiana probably around that 1 to 3 p.m. time frame, early afternoon. Mid-afternoon, here we are at dinner time, 6 p.m. That storm complex could be still ongoing across central Indiana and entering southern Indiana around evening time, 6 to 8 p.m. Now, that could vary a little bit. So the model run that just came out is 12Z. Okay, big difference here. See, the one we looked at this morning was further to the west. The one we're looking at here, this is the newest one. This is loading in right now, is further to the east. And it has a more pronounced system, a much stronger system. This is where we could see significant wind gusts at perhaps 60 to 70 plus in any of these Boeing segments here. And this would include more of Northwest Ohio, northern Indiana, versus what we just looked at from our 3 a.m. run. Big difference here. A little bit less organized and also further to the west. And the one that just loaded here, much further to the east, but also has a much stronger look to it, a more organized look to it. These are details that are not set in stone yet, and this lowers forecastability for today. It's unfortunate. This is why we're doing a live stream here today, to talk to you about the uncertainty with this setup. The potential is there. We have the ingredients to support severe weather, damaging winds, even significant damaging winds. But it all boils down to where these storms develop, how they develop, and how they organize. That's something our forecast guidance struggles on a little bit. As forecasters, we're looking at the ingredients that we have today, and we have all the ingredients coming together. It's just, how are these storms going to utilize those ingredients? Is the timing going to work out? Are other storms going to get in the way? Those are things that are yet to be determined. So here we are at about 6 p.m. This is also a later arrival time on the newer model. This morning's run around 3 a.m. had this line coming in Indiana further west, also earlier between the 1 to 2 p.m. time frame. This model, this is 12Z, this is coming in right now, doesn't have the storm complex coming into Indiana until closer to dinner time. So timing is not set in stone, but the general location is. Highest risk today, northern Indiana, northern Ohio, north of I-70. But if we get something like this that's highly organized, chances are it's going to pick up speed a little bit, and that could push the risk further south. So while the risk is maybe a slight risk across southern Indiana, it's not zero, it's just lower confidence. Are these storms going to organize to this extent that's shown here? Are they going to make it all the way to southern Indiana? And what hazards will they have with that? You can see this complex coming all the way into northern Kentucky and even West Virginia, but a little bit further east. This is 1 a.m. tomorrow morning after midnight. So depending on the scenario, we could see a weaker scenario, that'd be best case scenario, where we don't see rapid organization to this scale, similar to what we saw on this morning's run around 3 a.m., where a little bit more disorganized, but you could have isolated gusts 60, perhaps even 70 miles per hour, but not as widespread, right? Versus the latest run wants something much bigger, much more powerful, and much more concerning. So while both options are on the table, which scenario will take place is what's uncertain. And that's what we're trying to communicate here. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has an enhanced risk, but also noting the Storm Prediction Center noted this morning in this outlook, it is subject to change and it is subject to move around a little bit, depending on how our storms evolve here today. So bottom line, primary hazards here today, damaging winds, some of which could be significant everywhere in hatching. The hatching that you see here, damaging winds, significant damaging winds, meaning 70 plus, considerable winds or stronger, even a destructive warning, 80 miles per hour cannot be ruled out. Now, will every storm, every complex, or every Boeing segment have, 70 plus mile per hour winds? No. But the potential is there for a few of these storms to become quite significant today if we see that organization, especially what the latest model run shows. Now, take it with a grain of salt. These model runs have been bouncing back and forth between, um, a large, highly organized complex like we just saw, and kind of a lower end complex like we saw in this morning's runs around 3 a.m. So all hazards are on the table today, but will we see something, super organized? It's possible. It's possible. That's why we're talking about it. But it's also possible we see something a little bit weaker as well. Both scenarios are on the table today, but we need to prepare for the worst and hope for the best here today. Damaging winds, primary hazard, followed by hail, and even a spin up tornado or two along the leading edge can't be ruled out here today. We don't have a lot of spin at the surface. A lot of our shear parameters. Shear is a term that we use for changes in wind speed and direction with height. We need that for storm organization, severe weather, but also tornadoes. But we need a directional shear. We need not just changing with speed with height, we need direction with height. Our shear profiles today are what we call unidirectional. Uni meaning one, direction meaning the way it's going. They're going in the same direction, and that is northwest to southeast. And so having the unidirectional flow really promotes damaging winds over a tornado outbreak today. But when you get these big complexes, sometimes you can get a little bit of spin or even some eddies along the leading edge because of the different velocity of wind speed. You may have faster wind speed pushing right next against slower wind speed. That change in speed at the surface can create little spin up tornadoes. So that's something we'll have to watch here today. I think damaging winds is going to be the primary hazard here right now. And looking at radar currently, we do have some light rain, even a few thunderstorms across the Dowagiac area, just north of South Bend, St. Joseph, Elkhart County, have a few storms. But the main event is likely to come later this afternoon. But will these showers impact round two or the main round here this afternoon? It's possible. If cloud cover hangs along, we don't destabilize enough, we may end up seeing that weaker scenario shown by our morning run. But if these clear out, we get rapid destabilization. The atmosphere becomes highly volatile, highly unstable. It's possible we see rapid organization. So this is where the uncertainty comes into play. The model may say one thing, but here is what the atmosphere is actually doing. So those are things we're going to look at very closely here this morning and into the afternoon. I have time here. We'll answer a few of your questions here before we hop off here today. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'll try to answer some of those here for you today. So let's go to the chat here. But all of Indiana is in a risk for severe weather today. The highest confidence is north of I-70, central Indiana, northern Indiana, for the best chance for seeing those damaging wind gusts 58 miles per hour or greater, as well as even a significant gust, 70 plus, cannot be ruled out. Will every storm have that? No. The answer is no. But the potential is there for a few significant wind gusts here today across Indiana. Yeah, there's some fog out there this morning. Should be getting ready to mix out and lift out here shortly, but do watch out for some patchy fog out there here this morning. I see a lot of locations in here again. All of Indiana is in a risk for severe weather here today. Here's the wind probability map. Lower confidence to the south, highest confidence in areas in red. But just remember, the Storm Prediction Center said this may move around a little bit. It may deviate a little bit. It may protrude further south if we see something that's really organized and looks to make it all the way south, but it also may retreat north or east a little bit. It may move around a little bit. This is a very fluid setup here today. It's an evolving setup. It's not a set in stone forecast here today. Unfortunately, these Ridge Rider setups, these storm complex setups that we see here today really make forecasters kind of pull their hair out a little bit. As a forecaster, it's our job to communicate the risk and the hazards to the public and to you guys. But when the CAMs, our numerical models, really have a hard time with these setups because there's not a solid boundary to track like a cold front. These are pressure gradient setups where we have a kind of a squeeze play where we have strong winds aloft thanks to strong high pressure in the desert southwest that's bringing triple-digit heat to places like the southern plains, Texas, and we have an upper level low across Ontario and northeast Canada, and we're sandwiched between the two. So we just have little ripples. we don't really have a strong cold front to track. And these models struggle with that a little bit. They love trying to find a cold front in an environment where there isn't one. It's a pressure gradient. And that's a weak spot in the atmosphere where the air likes to rise. You get thunderstorms, but where they form and how strong they are, the models sometimes have a hard time with that. But we do have the setup here today for what could be a really strong a setup here today if we see that max potential realized. But there's a chance we don't. Again, look at the cams. They're kind of bouncing around all over the place this morning. They're struggling with the idea of how strong these storms are going to get and where exactly they're going to form. The newest model run brings a quite concerning line across northern Indiana, northwest Ohio. This would be likely a significant damaging wind event. This is 8 p.m. here this evening. This is also bringing it in later versus this morning's run at around 3 or so a.m. Here's 8 p.m. on this model run. Big difference. The newest one has it still up here, northern Indiana, southern Michigan, while this one has a decaying complex across southern Indiana. The same complex also further east and a lot weaker as well. So which one will it be? That's where the uncertainty lies, but the potential is there for all across the entire Great Lakes to see, strong to severe thunderstorms, even a few damaging wind gusts, and some significant as well. 70 plus cannot be ruled out in any of these storms. Norman, that's a great question. He asks, when will confidence be more certain in areas to hit? Likely later this afternoon. Once we see where these storms develop and how the atmosphere is destabilizing. The sun has only been up for a few hours now. We're going to be looking at data to see, what cloud cover looks like, how the atmosphere is responding in correlation to where the storms are. And once we get kind of a feel for how these storms are behaving, does it look like they're going to grow upscale into a very strong, significant complex? Or are they going to be more kind of broken and struggle a little bit? Again, difference in model runs here are quite staggering here this morning, but not uncommon to see that on these setups. For example, this morning's runs, similar storms moving from the north to the south, but you notice here a little bit more disorganized, kind of broken in nature. This would be kind of a lower end scenario, best case scenario, right? Versus our newest run, which is 12Z, which is coming in right now, shows a later arrival time, but a much more significant storm complex. While both scenarios are possible, we really won't know which one will come into fruition until we watch trends here this afternoon, and we'll monitor that. Timing could fluctuate too. This isn't a set in stone forecast. It's very fluid. It's subject to change. Really, from about, I think personally, the best chances for strong storms anytime after 1 p.m. today, but that may vary a little bit depending on how these storms evolve. They may arrive much later, and it may come a little bit earlier as well. We really don't know exactly the start time, but we'll know that later on here today, depending on how these storms evolve. So with that being said, probably going to hop off here. If you guys missed anything, feel free to go back and rewatch the beginning here. We'll talk about that here. Looking at our risk here by the Storm Prediction Center again, enhanced risk for all of central and northern Indiana, level 3 out of 5. This is where we have the highest confidence in strong to severe thunderstorms occurring. Slight risk across central southern Indiana, Bloomington points south, but all of Indiana is in a risk for severe weather today. And this forecast is subject to change, noted by the Storm Prediction Center, with that lower confidence in exactly where the greatest risk will set up at. This could deviate a little bit. You can see that enhanced risk expanded further south. We get a stronger scenario. It could also be pulled north a little bit and move to the east. All cards are on the table today, depending on how these storms evolve and how the atmosphere responds today as well. We have some rain and cloud cover across Michigan right now. If that doesn't clear out, we may see a lower end scenario. That's best case scenario. It's all dependent on how the atmosphere evolves here later today. But all hazards are on the table, with damaging winds being the primary risk here today, some of which could be significant, especially if we see that rapid storm organization. Where there is potential for widespread winds of 60 plus miles per hour. Even a few significant gusts of 70 plus miles per hour cannot be ruled out. Highest confidence north of I-70, northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and into Michigan. We'll keep you updated, though. We'll continue to watch trends here for the rest of the day, and we will push updates on the page as needed. Just note, forecasts today are subject to change, but just be weather aware today. Have a way to receive warnings, watches, and forecasts here today. And we'll be here to keep you ahead of the storm and go live if needed here today. So with that being said, thank you guys for watching us here today. And want to give a shout out to our sponsor for our live stream here today, our weather briefing, Rutgers Outdoor Services, based in Indianapolis. Give them a call if you have any trees that like you feel like could be problematic. Give them a call before the next storm hits. They'll take care of that for you. Trees can cause damage to property, buildings, and we want to make sure to minimize that risk for you. With that being said, we're going to hop out of here, and we'll keep you updated here ahead of the storm. We'll watch trends here today. Just know all of Indiana is in a risk here for severe weather today. Highest confidence, northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and just note that forecasts are subject to change today. That includes timing as well. So keep it here. We'll keep you ahead of the storm, and we hope you have a great Monday. Stay safe. Have multiple ways to receive warnings today, and we will see you later if we need to go live here today.